Okay, so what I'd like to look at is the well-known pasuk that we know it well because we say it every year at the Seder. It's right at the end of the parsha, and it's always interesting to see the psukim in their original form, because sometimes it just sheds light on the fact that the psukim are we have them in one context, specifically in this case the Seder, but the actual fact that they perhaps have a completely different context and completely different meaning when we take them in their original form. And that's part of what the Seder is. The Seder is this the space of Haggadah. Haggadah is an expounding of something very much out of its normal pshat. So if that's the case, then the psukim that the Seder brings are going to be different, or may have a little bit of a kind of specific focus meaning. And so let's look at it. So it says, when your child will ask you, machar, then tomorrow, the way you translate the word machar, lemor, to say, what are these chukim and these mishpatim and these edut which Hashem Eloheinu has commanded you? Which, so Rashi says, it's a fascinating Rashi, because Rashi's asking, what does it mean? What does it mean that your son will ask you tomorrow? Why does it say kish al bincha? So he says, yesh machar shehu achar zman. That machar means after a time, after a certain time, after some time. And it's not clear exactly what Rashi is trying to say. But I think what Rashi is saying is that at that point in time, in Bnei Yisrael are in the sorry, I just got to open the doors. Come on. So when Bnei Yisrael they're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, there's no need, there's no doubt as to what happened. There's no question as to what it's all about. They've been sitting and learning for 40 years as they've walked through the desert, and everything's been fine. But now what Moshe Rabbeinu says, that there will come a time where that clarity is not what you thought it was. There will come a time where Bnei Yisrael are not having doubts, but they're not going to have a full picture of what this whole thing was all about. That's the simple way of understanding Rashi. And then what do you say? So you say to your children, I just want you to understand. So we were slaves to Paro. There was a point in time where we were enslaved. And Hashem took us out with this Yad Chazakah, the strong hand. And Hashem showed us, it was clear exactly what it is that Hashem had done with all these incredible plagues that He did. But the purpose of that all was in order to take us out of that, to give us the land of Israel, and that's the simple understanding, and that is our space of the Seder, where we focus on this concept of coming out of Mitzrayim. However, the Ha'imik Davar, he says that it's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit difficult to understand. That's the Netziv. He says that Parsha Zu Nifla'ah. He says this Parsha is like Nifla'ah means like, wow. It's like wondrous. He says, what's wondrous about it? And I don't even know if we're going to have time to do all of it, but he says the Sha'ila, the question and the answer, both of them are just like unbelievable, as we would say, amazing, right? It's unbelievable. Why is it so amazing? He says, so he says, do we need to understand the reason for the mitzvahs? So yeah, when your child will ask you the next day at some future time, what is all these things? So he says, is it to try and understand for us to get to the Tama mitzvot, to really understand the reasoning behind mitzvot? He says, he says, in the same way is that you can't actually ask, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create certain things? Like, why did Hashem create the mosquito? Why did Hashem create all those strange things? If it was Hashem who created COVID, why was it Hashem that created it? So, kacha, efshar lachkor al tchunat mitzvot. He says, so too, in the same way as you can't question why creation. It's an amazing thing when you go to the bush or you go to a place where you're actually able to engage in nature, where you see just the variety of green and the variety of colors and the variety of different animals and species and birds. Like, why did Hashem do that? You can't. No one can give you an answer to that. She says, "Kacha." So too, so too, you can't really understand the depth of the mitzvot. And so, therefore, what is this question that is being asked? And not only that, he says, what's the chokhmah in asking such a question? To the extent that this question is the question of the chokhmah at the Seder. He says, and if in fact that is the question, what is this edut and the chukim and the mishpatim? Then the answer should be, these are the edut and and these are the chukim and should give and delineate each one and give the details of what each one is about. But the answer is not an answer, right? So this is what, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of from slavery, he gave us things to do without any real understanding of what they're all about. He says, so therefore let's try and understand, he says, what is this whole thing all about? And as I said, I'm not sure if we're going to get a full answer, but let's try and understand an aspect of it. He says that he says, in actual fact, if you look deeply through the answer and the way the approach that the Torah takes this pasuk, it's not about the guf mitzvot. It's not on the actual mitzvah itself. It's not questioning the mitzvah, right? But rather, it's talking about the manner in which we question, the manner in which we get answers. And therefore, he says the following. We need to understand that there's a Mishnah in Makot, which we say every time we learn, every time we teach something, and before we say Kaddish the Rabbanan, we always say this little statement. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot Yisrael lefi chachim Torah mitzvah shenemar Hashem chavetz leman tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir. What that means is Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha explained that Hashem wanted lezakot Yisrael. He wanted to give us a certain merit, and therefore lefichach hibar lehem Torah and mitzvah. Therefore, he gave us much Torah and much mitzvot to learn and to do and to engage with. He says that what does it mean? That you can't say that the reason why Hashem gave us the 613 mitzvahs is in order to give us schut, in order to give us merit. He says that the thing is that every single mitzvah in itself, and this is such a beautiful idea, every single mitzvah, he says, has a foundational point in it that in itself is good enough for the whole world to have been established. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't give us that mitzvah just because he wanted to give us some merit. That mitzvah itself is part of the very fabric of the integrity of the world in which we live in. So therefore, if that's the case, it must mean that there's something more than. Even though every single mitzvah has something, there's something about the depth within every single mitzvah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. He says, for example, he says, the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us all these mitzvot and all the Torah around the mitzvot in order to understand the mitzvot is that even when we're not doing anything, we can also get schut. So, for example, he quotes the example of if you don't eat the blood of an animal that has been killed, you don't eat it. So let's say a person's a vegetarian. If a person's a vegetarian, there's no mitzvah in you're not eating meat, but nonetheless there's a certain level of schut and of schar ka'oisa mitzvah, like they're doing the mitzvah of not eating the blood. And that's what he says. That v'zeh miyushav, and from that we can understand all the different types of mitzvahs that we have, is that in order, said, because the whole point of each mitzvah and the depth of each mitzvah and the depth of every learning that we have to do in order to understand the mitzvah is to give us a zechut in every single aspect of the mitzvah. And if that's the case, therefore he says part of the reward that we get, part of the zechus that we get in our mitzvah observance is not only the doing of the mitzvah itself, but the hachana, the preparation of that mitzvah. Rav Soloveitchik used to speak about this concept of the Erev Shabbos Jew. You know, we all Shomer Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, but the Erev Shabbos Jew is the Jew that prepares for Shabbos, and it's in that preparation that Shabbos becomes much more engaging in a way, but also there's a certain level of schus within the preparation of Shabbos, because that's important, because it enables the mitzvah. And so therefore he says that this is what the question that is being asked here is that what is going on here? Why is there so much depth in every single mitzvah? Why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu just have to give us just an overview of what we should do? Why does there have to be a depth? Why does there have to be something that some things we do understand and some things we don't understand? And if you remember, we spoke about the concept of chukim, meaning not the mitzvahs that we don't understand, but the concept of the Yud Gimel mitzvah, or Yud Gimel midot, Torah and Didreshet, from the 13 principles in which we learn our Torah. So what is really the Netziv is presenting is that this child, the wise, the Chacham child, is saying, I need to try and understand, what is this all about? Why is it that Hashem has given us a dut? A dut are these testimonies to Him. Why do we have these chukim? Why do we have all this way of learning Torah that makes Torah so complicated? Why can't it just be a superficial thing that we understand this is what we have to do and nothing more? Why is there all the mishpatim? Why are these laws that we need in order to ensure that we have positive and appropriate social engagements? What's this all about? And the reason is, you need to understand, you were slaves to Paro in Mitzrayim. And when you were slaves to Paro in Mitzrayim, you had no ability to engage with anything but that work. And what HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and did is that He came and He took you out of that space, and He gave you the ability, or gave us the ability, to really start and powerfully work in ensuring that every single thing that we do in our lives, because there are chukim and mishpatim and everything, and we have to do these chakirot, we have to look carefully into every action that we do, that it is based in from a Torah approach. That is lahagdil Torah v'yadir. That gives us the ability to have the zchut in the Torah, and it enables us to lahagdil, to make great, to make large, to expand the Torah, and to adir, and to make it more beautiful. And so that's really what our role is in this world, is to take all this learning that we have and put it into practice, both in its specific mitzvah form as well as in the preparation that we do for it, and in the impact that it has on the people around us, and obviously on ourselves. And in that way, we begin to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out to be this nation that has to serve as this example. It's not just a nation, just anything else, but it's a nation of Eidut, Chukim, and Mishpatim, which Hashem has given to us. Why? Kedei lezakot et Yisrael, in order to give us merit, both in the eyes of Hashem and in the eyes of the world around us. I wish everybody a beautiful and warm Shabbos, and please God, we'll continue next week. God bless everybody.
Shkach, thank you. Shkach.
Yes, thank
Cheers.
you.
Shkach, thank you.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh,